Good afternoon, everybody. My name's John Fowlie. Today's topic is we're talking about forming digital teams, and something I'm really excited about talking to you all about today. So globally, at the moment, there's millions of people that are now transitioning into digital teams and working out of home. The provocative question for us is, how might we foster a culture of high performance in these digital teams? This is me. This is the world I grew up in. So I grew up in a world of high performance. I grew up surrounded by Olympic athletes, talking shop. Both my parents are Olympians. My mom's a 5-time Olympian. My dad's a 3-time Olympian. And, literally grew up, having dinner on a Sunday night with Olympic champions sitting there talking about that sort of environment. We moved to Australia in 1992, my dad, so he could coach at the AIS, and then I followed in his footsteps in around 2002. So I coached Alicia Coots to 3 Olympic Games, including the London Olympics, where she won 5 medals, equaling the great Ian Thorpe and Shane Gould as the single greatest ever performance by an Australian at the Olympic Games. I left swimming in 2016 when we started a family, and this is our little boy, Jude. The moment he was born, really everything changed for me, and I decided I wanted to be a dad. I wanted to be around a lot more. In a busy year, I typically travel up to 4 months of the year, and I decided I wanted to do something a little bit different. And when I found ThinkTalks and their mission and their connection to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, that was the thing that really drew me into that environment and drew me into the idea of, making the world, better for my children. And I tell people a little bit about it, like, the thing that's amazing about growing up, around the Olympians is every day, you wake up and you get to work with people who are trying to improve themselves and improve their lives, and that's really a special thing in itself. But, to get to come to work every day with people who are actually trying to make the world a better place is truly, inspiring for me. But when I came from that environment of, high performance sport into this sort of area, high performance was something that was talked about a lot, but wasn't necessarily very well defined. So one of the first things that we actually did was define it here at ThinkTalks for us. And this is how we define ThinkTalks high performance. So it's a team of highly skilled people with a clear sense of purpose at the leading edge of their field, resourced and supported to achieve high quality and continuously improving outcomes which are sustainable over time. Highly skilled people with a clear sense of purpose at the leading edge of their field. Resourced and supported to achieve high quality and continuously improving outcomes which are sustainable over time. So I don't consider high performance to be a flash in the pan. I don't consider it to be, a single championship, a single medal. What I was really proud about, working with Alicia and the culture that we fostered at the AIS, was that she was able, to perform for 10 years, at that level, at the highest standard, of international performance. So how? So what are the real key things to creating high performance and high performing culture, and how can we take those lessons now into a digital era for teams? Alignment. So that's the first thing we're going to really talk about, is exploring, some different pillars of team alignment and some different lenses to look at it through. So the first one we're going to talk about a little bit is intellectual alignment. And this is where really a lot of strategy and stuff is, a lot of conversations at the moment are happening. So this is purpose, vision, mission, values, strategy, approach. Any of Simon Sinek work, that really start with why, those kind of things. The next real key one is behavioral alignment. And there's 3 sort of buckets in there that we tend to look at. There's high performance behaviors, empowering behaviors, and then health and wellness behaviors. Ritual And this is really key as well. So syncing, communicating, celebrating, laughing, and competing. And I put that with an asterisk, really coming from my background. But I'm going to talk a little bit about that later on and how a bit of competitive energy can be, really great for your team. And then knowledge sharing as well. And then finally, technical. So our methods and our learning and development. So at the moment, there's a plethora of stuff out there with, how to work from home and how to build teams and how to do those kind of things. But typically what I've been finding is they're sort of focusing on 4 key areas at the moment. So the first one, there's lots of stuff here on this intellectual stuff. There's a whole bunch of stuff here on health, wellness, behaviors, and how to adjust to working successfully from home. There's stuff on syncing, communicating, and a ton of stuff on methods, platforms, different ways to really coordinate, your teams as well. But we're going to take a different cut through this today. And what we're going to look at is high performance behaviors, celebrating, laughing, and competing, and then learning and development as well. So factor number 1, psychological safety and trust. And we're going to pull that out of our high performance behaviors as a real focal point for us today. So flashback to 1999, get a little bit of retro feeling going on there. So this is Amy Edmondson, and she posed this research question: do better medical teams make less mistakes? Give you a minute to think about it. You can write it down if you're playing at home. Your gut would be that, yep, better teams would make less mistakes, and that's what she expected to find. But her finding was actually the exact opposite. It was the best hospital teams reported making the most mistakes. So have a think as why that might be. So the interesting thing there is that they weren't actually making more mistakes. It was the fact that the teams were actually more willing to talk about their mistakes. And she coined this term psychological safety. And it's since then, it's been cited, thousands of times in performance literature and in team literature as well. So she defines psychological safety as the belief that one will not be punished or humiliated for speaking up with ideas, questions, concerns, or mistakes. When Google decided to study their best teams and what separated them from the rest of them, they went out there and they coined this Project Aristotle. Their findings were in line with Amy's. So right at the top of what separated their absolute best teams: psychological safety, then dependability, structure and clarity, meaning, and impact. So how? How can you build psychological safety with your teams when you're moving into a digital era? Design for sticky time. Sounds strange, doesn't it? Stay with me a moment. So sticky time. So we've coined this from the idea of sticky spaces, right? So sticky spaces are those which draw people together to share experiences, ideas, and knowledge, right? So typically these include things like the coffee machine, the printing room, snack bar, lunch space. I think famously one of the Silicon Valley, might be Microsoft, maybe it was Google, they actually had their baristas slow down the speed that they were making coffee at so people would actually stick around and spend more time cross-pollinating ideas. When I started at the AIS, this was really the dining hall. And, sometimes we go in for breakfast and you get chatting to a sports scientist or a coach from another environment. You'd end up spending, all day there, all morning there. You'd have lunch with them and then go off to training, afterwards. And we've had some great discussions in those kind of environments. So the key thing with these spaces is these conversations really strengthen relationships, understanding, and minimize negative cultural attributes such as the association bias. So what we really mean by that is it gives you more of an understanding of what's going on with that person and allows you to see that person, as a person with stresses and different pressures that they have in their life, rather than just an email on a screen, or something along those types of lines. So how might we design for sticky time? So these are some things that we're currently doing here at ThinkPlace, or that we're starting to try with some different teams that we're working with. So the first thing is really continuing or implementing morning stand-ups. And we've actually got teams that are working at the moment in shift works in some different environments and having stand-ups in the middle of the day, or even other teams that are having stand-ups at the end of the day. Have virtual coffee breaks or virtual walking check-ins, and we'll explore the walking element of it a little bit later on as well. But there's no reason why you wouldn't actually, throw the headphones on or grab your phone, and go walk around the block and catch up with somebody you have in your team. Use think cards or blind dating to share experiences, challenges, and hopes. So think cards are a brilliant design from our Kenyan team, and it's really focused on how you break down power imbalances you have within teams. Now, this isn't just airy-fairy, sort of stuff here. There's some real core elements that come out of this. So the goal of this time, right, is to exchange information, strengthen relationships, but really importantly as well with it, it actually allows you to work faster and work with the benefit of the doubt, down the track as your team. So it is absolutely critical that you invest some time in this when you're forming up your digital teams. So next one we're going to look at is coaching, not tasking. And we're going to throw and look at that through a learning and development over in the technical alignment stream. So at the moment, one of the risks that you might have if you're taking your team into a digital space is a hyper focus on tasking and coordination. And there's an absolute, myriad of different products, and they're all great. And they are essential, and you absolutely have to use them. But there is a risk, if you only focus in this space with your teams, that your culture becomes transactional. And the only time you're really connecting and communicating is actually to just organize and shift work around and sort of direct people with what to do instead of connecting on a deeper level with your team. So coaching is unlocking a person's potential to maximize their own performance, helping them to learn rather than teaching them. And this is by Tim Galway, who's really one of the great minds when it came from bringing sports coaching into the business world. So importantly with coaching is that it's actually a cycle, right? So, and depending on what coaching model you look at, they'll add more and more sort of different phases to it, and there's a bunch of different things. They make it look really fancy, but essentially, there's 3 steps to it. So the first one is planning, taking action, and reflection. But really importantly with coaching is every time you actually go through that cycle, you create more and more value as you're going through it. So, and what we mean by that is if you only go through coaching, every 6 months or every 12 months you have a coaching conversation, there's really limited value as to going through it, on a weekly basis or actually coaching in the moment with your teams. So one of the things we're going to quickly explore is the difference between a blame culture and a learning culture, and why bringing this stuff to your environment is important, especially with digital teams. So a blame culture is really focused on blame and judgment and focused, in the past. So it's stuff like judgment, focus on the past, fear, self-protection, self-interest, defensiveness, reduced awareness, lack of feeling of control, and high stress. A coaching and a learning culture, centered around curiosity and partnership, right? It's a sense of aspiration, action orientation, hope, solutions. It allows you to actually take risks, hope, recognition, identify inefficiencies, highly aware, accurate feedback, and self-responsible. Sounds pretty good, doesn't it? So how might you design, for a coaching culture if your team's now dispersed and working out of home and you're only connecting online? Well, here's some really great ideas, again, that we've been trying here and been trying with some of our teams, right? Train all of your managers and leaders in the foundations of coaching. So we actually take all of our emerging leaders here, through a couple of day training program called the Foundations of Coaching, where we really upskill them on these skills and on those techniques. Book intentional time for coaching regularly with every team member. Right, so not allowing yourself to just have this transactional sort of arrangement with the team, but actually having enough time to sit down and coach them and help develop them. Host coaching clinics for 15 or 30 minutes with a coaching master or with a design master in our context. Now, the way we did this, is we would just have drop-in clinics where people could book in, come in, and get 15 to 30 minutes to help, jump through a problem that they might be having. Conduct regular design critique sessions, and then crowdsource quick feedback through what we use here is actually Slack, and we use a Feedback 5 Slack channel where anybody can, post something they want some feedback with in that channel and get a little bit of group coaching with it. So the next element we're going to look at here is designing good feelings and designing for good brain chemistry. And this is really all centered around celebrating, laughing, and competing. And it's in the ritual pillar that we have. So working in this kind of environment, no matter how nicely you set it up at home, right, over time, this will dull your mood and your hormones and can actually flatten you out quite a bit. But there are things that you can do to sort of shape that up and to get some good stuff going on, some good hormones, some good feelings sort of going on in your body. So procrastination, self-doubt, a lack of enthusiasm, these are all linked to low levels of dopamine. But don't worry, there's stuff you can do about it. So you can use your new routine that you have at home. You don't have to commute anymore, to actually pick up some extra sleep. Also share some music with your team. Create an office playlist. Both of these, have positive impacts on dopamine in your body. Loneliness, depression, these appear when serotonin is absent. Go for a walk outside every day. Try meditating regularly, right? Both of these things will help with serotonin release, and they'll help to get these things flowing and to get you feeling, supercharged about your work and about your team environment. Low trust, low cooperation, and high stress are all associated with low oxytocin. Show and tell weekly something that inspires you or generates curiosity. Ask for feedback from your team on your delivery as a leader. Okay, both of these things, right, will help to develop that trusting environment, that psychological safety that we were talking about, right, and help with that release of that hormone as well. So low endorphin levels are associated with depression and headaches. So here are some things you can do, right? Laugh together, find joy, and play, right? Intentionally design some time with your team, to have a space where you can laugh, forward on those things that are funny, share some videos, or just, gather around, watch a funny show for half an hour. I don't know. So how might we design for that good brain chemistry? So these are those lists of about 10 different things that you can try with your team. It's not about doing them all at the same time. You might put in a different one every week and just sort of mix it up and keep some different things happening with them. But what I'm really encouraging you to do and hoping that you'll do is actually be inspired out of today, to lead for high performance, right? Because out there are amazing things happening all around the world at the moment. So this is a story that really inspires me, right? So an overrun hospital in Chiari, Italy, ran out of a critical valve for their ventilators. a local journalist asked for help, and he put it out to the 3D printing community. Without a physical product to model from, Insnova reverse engineered a 3D printing valve. The first prototype was ready in 6 hours. Thank you.